Jaws is a classic. Who doesn't know the horrifying tale of an island town victimized by a killer shark, the dedicated efforts of its police chief to save them, his stalwart oceanographer friend, the negligent mayor, and the crazy captain who hunts the great white beast? Its masterful use of suspense captivated an entire nation, became the first blockbuster, and reinvented cinema as we know it today, inspiring young and old filmmakers alike. With such an important film, it's no surprise that the screenplay is intensely filled with quality writing and subtext. While the film did omit some details from its blueprints, the underlying tones and subtext present within the first 10 pages still resonate within the final product. So let's dive into the beginning of this immortal movie and see how it established its tone and how the terror it creates echoes through a story that has endured for 50 years now. It's not an opinion, it's barely an analysis, it's just the first 10 pages. The story takes place on Amity Island, a small town dependent on its beach tourism. Young Chrissy Watkins entices a boy into the water at dawn, but is attacked and killed. The next morning, Amity Police Chief Brody finds her corpse and learns that she was killed by a shark attack. He hurries to close the beaches, but is stopped by Mayor Larry Vaughn, who doesn't want the bad publicity to affect their tourism dollar. Brody relents, allowing the beaches to stay open, staying vigilant despite everyone else enjoying themselves. Unfortunately, the shark attacks and kills a little boy named Alex Kintner, sending the town into a panic. Against the warnings of grizzled fisherman Quint and Brody's own misgivings, Mayor Vaughn only closes the beaches for 24 hours. Several other fishermen try to catch the predator. Amidst the chaos, oceanographer Matt Huber arrives to offer Brody his expertise. After examining Chrissy's body, he confirms that she did die from a shark attack.
It was a shark.
Despite the fisherman catching a tiger shark, Huber reveals that the bite radius is too small to have killed Chrissy, and likely therefore Alex, which worries Brody and angers Vaughn. Alex's mother arrives and slaps Brody, blaming him for Alex's death, saying that he should have kept the beaches completely closed. At dinner, Hooper convinces Brody to go dissect the tiger shark. He determines that the shark is not responsible for the deaths, and the duo go out on Hooper's boat to find the creature. They find an abandoned boat and discover a great white shark tooth. Hooper drops it when he's scared by the rotting head of the boat's former owner. They try to tell Mayor Vaughn that their problem is bigger than they thought, but he ignores them. A multitude of tourists come to the beach. Though they're hesitant to go into the water, after the mayor persuades a friend to do so, the rest of them follow suit. However, the shark makes its way into the pond and nearly eats a group of children, only to be distracted by a nearby swimming instructor. Devastated by the event, the mayor allows Brody to hire Quint to go after the shark. Quint has misgivings about bringing Brody and Hooper, but allows them to accompany him, provided they can listen to him. The trio venture out into the ocean on Quint's ship, the Orca. Brody manages to bait the shark to them, but upon seeing the beast, fears that they may be outmatched.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Quint manages to stick the shark with a barrel, which will force it to surface eventually. That night, the trio have drinks and show their collective scars, with Quinn revealing why he's so anti-shark. He was on the USS Indianapolis and waited for several days with sharks eating his crewmates. The shark resurfaces and Quint sticks it with another barrel. The beast proves difficult to capture as it starts flooding the boat. Becoming obsessed with beating the creature, Quint damages the radio so Brody can't call for help, and waterlogs the engines, causing them to become adrift. Hooper suggests poisoning the shark by using the cage to get closer to it in the water. The shark destroys the cage and Hooper swims away. The orca is starting to look worse when the shark jumps onto the stern. Quint slides into the shark's mouth and, despite his best attempts to stop it, is killed by the creature. Brody, now alone, manages to get an oxygen tank into the shark's mouth. He climbs above the mast and starts to shoot at it.
Smile, you son of a...
At the last moment, he gets the hit, causing the tank to explode and killing the shark. Hooper resurfaces and the two use barrels to swim back to Amity. Jaws, very aptly, opens with Jaws. The screenplay begins with a silhouette of razor-sharp teeth chomping down against the backdrop of blue light beneath the water. Then we hear a symphony of underwater sounds. The score to Jaws is iconic, perfectly setting up the atmosphere of the movie. But going deeper, this opening paragraph establishes the importance of water in the film. Not only is the chief character afraid of it, creating an extra obstacle to his journey,
You don't go in the water at all, do you?
Some bad hat, Harry.
but tourism on Amity is reliant on it, which influences the mayor's decisions. Most importantly, the silhouette, which the paragraph outright states takes place from inside the shark, emphasizes the danger in the water and the threat to the characters within the film, whether physical, emotional, or financial. We get a small scene near a lighthouse, showing a lone boy in the water. This perhaps symbolizes the lingering danger of being alone in the water. Chrissy gets eaten when she goes swimming alone. Matt Hooper is jump scared and loses a key piece of evidence when he's alone. The shark attacks the pond only once most beachgoers have left due to a prank. Hooper's shark cage is destroyed when he's alone. Quint is arrogant enough to think he can take on the shark alone, and fails. And Brody's last stand is just him versus the shark. Then we head over to Amity's Main Street, described as a quaint little resort town. The key words there are quaint and resort. The former is meant to imply simplicity or tradition. The people of Amity have a way of doing things, and they can't or won't change that. It's also meant to imply a sense of peace. Small towns have this image of being safe, tight-knit communities that don't like outsiders and rarely see anything too gruesome. This is a chief reason why Brody wants to be here, even going so far as to call living here a vacation on a later page. It's safe. His character previously worked as a cop in the city, the movie outright claims it's New York, and saw crime on every corner. Moving here was more stable and safer for him. Resort implies the importance of tourism for this town, which is the mayor's primary motivation in ensuring the beaches are kept open. It also provides the stakes for Brody, since his job is to keep people safe. The contrasting ideologies is what creates a conflict between these two characters, and the looming threat of the shark only enhances the drama. The scene continues to describe the fog in the streets, likening it to a biblical plague. An interesting use of words, since this implies the town is guilty of a sin, the penance for which is the shark. The negligence and greed of the mayor, as well as Brody's complicit actions in regards to it, contribute to the tragedy that befalls them. The next scene sets the timeline for the movie and stakes for the mayor. It's mid-June. The 4th of July is coming up, which is peak tourism for their little town. Then we come to a beach scene, where we see a bunch of young university students partying around a bonfire. We meet Chrissy Watkins, Worthington in the script, who drags a drunken Tom Cassidy away from the fire and teasingly ducks away when he attempts to kiss her. Chrissy is trying to get him to go skinny dipping, oblivious to the danger that lurks in the water. Now there's something interesting to note about the first page. There's not a line of dialogue on it. The script opens with description alone, setting up the water, the town, and establishing the tone and atmosphere of the story before us. It creates this false sense of peacefulness with sinister undertones, and implies that all that summer fun is about to come to a gruesome end. Page 2 continues to forego dialogue in favor of description, showing Chrissy and Tom running away from the bonfire, with the former being much more energetic. Tom is called out of shape, but it's far more likely him being drunk, high, or very tired, as later scenes will imply that this is just before sunrise. Atop the dune, Chrissy looks out onto the water, which is the only sound that we can hear. Something interesting is that the script only implies what is going on, but leaves it to our imagination what's happening. One of the strengths of Jaws is that the shark isn't really seen proper until about 2/3 into its runtime, allowing the terror and reaction of the characters to impact us, rather than the monster itself. Just as Tom reaches the peak of the dune, Chrissy leads him away again, this time tossing her clothes toward him. Tom can't get his own clothes off and stumbles on the beach. Chrissy gets into the water, described as a delicate splash in the ocean that is unusually placid. Placid means calm and peaceful, and if you've ever seen the ocean, you know it's anything but. It's a subtle but direct detail that tells you the water isn't as safe as it seems. Chrissy, oblivious to the danger, swims even further out. This is a masterful use of the bomb under the table. Remember that we already know the shark is there from the opening paragraph, and the tone established suggests that it's a danger to the town. This means that even though Chrissy doesn't know it, we understand the danger she's in, building the suspense of what's to come. And we don't even have to wait long for the payoff, as the water suddenly gets a gentle bulge near her. The waves bob her up and down, like the rising tension of the scene. She hopes that it's Tom, but when she sees him still lying on the beach, she heads to shore. Then, the shark attacks. We never see more than Chrissy's reaction and her desperation to stay alive, but this whole paragraph shows it in to-the-point detail. It bolts her upright, slams her into the water, and jerks her around until all we see is a hand that disappears beneath the surface. The chaos subsides as the water calms, and we know that Chrissy is gone. Tom doesn't yet realize what's happened, just like the town is oblivious to the terror that awaits them. The first person to find out is going to be Martin Brody, whose usual morning routine is about to be interrupted by the death of the girl who just wanted to go swimming. The first half of page 3 is dedicated to Martin Brody getting out of bed and going to check himself out in the bathroom, first on the scale and then in the mirror. At 42 years old, he notices that he's getting heavier and balder, and promises that he'll get his act together tomorrow. The implication of this section is that he's let himself go a bit. He reaches for the mirror and finds a brochure from his wife about a summer destination. Omitted from the final film is a subplot about Ellen wanting to get away from Amity and go on a vacation. In the script, she's sick of Maine lobster and wants a good old-fashioned cheeseburger. She complains that Martin hasn't had time off in 2 years. However, he refutes with, living here is time off. Later in the film, Martin will tell Hooper that he found being a cop in New York pointless because there was always another crime ready to happen.
But in Amity, one man can make a difference.
In Amity, there's significantly less crime, at least in terms of murder and mayhem, so his position is more of a figurehead solving low-level crimes such as vandalism. Therefore, he views living in Amity as a vacation in and of itself. This brings up the symbolism from the first half of the page, Brody letting himself go. He's become a bit complacent in his daily routine and enjoys the ease that working in Amity brings him. This is part of the reason that he listens so intently to the mayor's wishes later on. Even more so, he's lost his edge and needs something big that will help him get his act together. Brody starts talking about Mayor Vaughn's high hopes for the season. While he spins this as a positive, citing the money they'll make off their beachfront investments, it heavily implies that he doesn't want to do anything. It also adds more fuel to the fire for the reader, since we know that there's a shark in the water, but the characters don't yet. Despite this, Ellen pleads with Brody to take her away from the house and go on a cross-country trip in a motorhome. He starts to tell her that they'll play it by ear, but she finishes the sentence for him. Basically, he's saying that he doesn't want to commit to a promise he has no intention of keeping. Ellen turns away from him and looks out the window, to what the script calls a glorious view, to which she responds with, "Another shitty day in paradise." The marriage in the final film is much more wholesome than the one depicted here, as the two of them are on completely opposite wavelengths. He views it as paradise, but she's sick of it. Another layer of conflict for our main protagonist. The sun seeps into the room and it reveals his police chief badge, showing us his profession and implies the reasoning behind his viewpoint. We transition to the kitchen, where Brody receives a phone call from his deputy calling about Tom Cassidy, saying that Chrissy is missing. This is the inciting incident, since Brody's journey is about getting rid of the shark and protecting the town. Martin drives past an enormous billboard for the town, which shows a swimmer enjoying the water. City billboards are meant to welcome guests to their town and advertise what's so appealing about them, in this case, swimming at the beach. This sets the stage for the dramatic irony of having a people-eating shark in the water, signifying the importance of Martin's journey. He goes to the beach to answer the call and meets Tom Cassidy, while Hendricks is searching a little farther downwind. The chief believes that Chrissy may have simply ditched Tom after he passed out drunk, but the young man doubts this, claiming that it's never happened to him before. Interestingly, Brody is acting to Tom how the mayor will later act towards him and Hooper, claiming that there's nothing to worry about despite the presence of very real danger. However, Brody's complacency is about to end when he's snapped back to reality and tossed in the water. Hendricks blows the whistle for help. He tries to whistle twice, but it's too much for him, hinting at the gruesome sight before him. My understanding of this character is that he's been in Amity his whole life. Brody will tell Hooper that it's been 25 years since Amity had a murder or a shooting, so it's very likely that Hendricks has never experienced anything as horrible as Chrissy's eaten corpse. Hendricks therefore represents the innocence of the town, and his reaction therefore proves that neither him nor the town are ready for what's in store. Brody starts to head for the body, but Tom is less enthusiastic about it, telling Brody that he won't be forced into seeing it. The rest of the page returns to exclusively using description, relying on visual storytelling to create the tension between the characters. When Brody reaches Hendricks, his deputy looks white as a sheet, again pointing to the severity of the damage. He tells Brody something, who nods understandingly and walks cautiously towards the corpse. Even the New York hardened cop is shaken by the scene before him. Tom is afraid to see, but Brody insists because they need a positive ID. He achieves this by showing some sympathy and places a gentle hand on the young man's shoulders. A good way to get us to sympathize with the character. After he confirms the identity, Brody worries about what the future holds for him as we cut to his office. His secretary Polly follows closely behind, about to reveal some of the complaints that the townsfolk have. However, Brody has bigger fish to fry. Despite this new case, Brody's personal life is still appearing, with Ellen having placed brochures on his desk. Brody symbolically shows that he's got a higher priority by placing the new files on top of the brochures. This also shows how he puts work over his wife's desire for travels, which she did mention was something making her unhappy. Polly reads his calendar to him, oblivious to his misery. Brody reaches the typewriter and begins to enter Chrissy's incident report. As Polly reads, we notice that Brody is intensely focused on it, ignoring the request for fireworks inspection and a karate gang having damaged a fence. These are things that the mayor will worry about more than, and ask Brody to focus on instead of, the shark problem. Brody enters Chrissy's name, but skips over the cause of death to her next of kin information. While he probably has a hunch to what happened, he's still waiting for confirmation. The phone rings and Polly answers it, saying it's the coroner. He tells Brody what kills her, and Brody is visibly scared. The page concludes with him typing it into the report. He has confirmation of his suspicions, but he's also realizing that there's another looming problem, and it's been chattering away at him this whole page. The upcoming celebrations and tourism. The people are in danger. The vacation is over, Brody. Time to get your act together. Brody takes a second to absorb what he's just been told. He's in a state of shock so great that Polly has to remove the phone from his ear for him. And then it kicks in, giving him a new resolve. Whether he's scared or complacent or not, he has a duty as the chief of police to protect the people. So he asks Polly what the island has planned for the day. Brody already knows what he must do: disrupt the celebration for the tourists and close the beaches, despite the anger he knows it will incur. Hendricks reveals that there's never been any signs to close the beaches since they've never done it before. Brody takes off just as a merchant comes through the door with a complaint for him to handle. Brody, for now, is the last sane man in town, aside from maybe Hendricks, who's loyal to him. Despite the merchant thinking that his complaint about a misparked truck is important, Brody is trying to save lives, recognizing a danger and acting immediately. Something that could be interpreted, though, is that Brody might be seeing danger where there isn't any. He did live in New York, where the danger was around every corner.
Violence, rip-offs, muggings. Kids can't leave the house. You gotta walk them to school.
And it may have affected how he sees things. He's already treating it as important before it becomes something more than an isolated incident. Outside, Brody rushes down the street. He even passes by the coroner and the picket fence that the kids had broken, because he's got something more important to take care of now. This is a man on a mission, and that shows us something else about his character. Despite his complacency and his self-made promise to get his act together, when danger rears its head, he immediately takes action and is ready to do what he needs to protect his home. The owner of the broken fence attempts to get Brody's attention, but is brushed aside for the moment. The senseless vandalism is ignored by Brody, but it's interesting since the mayor will later say that the vandalism of the town billboard is a bigger issue than closing the beaches and the looming threat of a people-eating shark. The coroner enters a building and comes out with the Gazette editor. Both of them beeline to the other side of the street. Chances are that the coroner understands the severity of their situation and is trying to get the word out. However, given that the duo don't immediately start a conversation about doing so, it's far more likely that they're about to find someone with more authority than Brody to force him to keep quiet. Brody is making a beeline of his own, heading towards a hardware store. The owner invites him to take what he needs, unaware or uncaring about what's got him worked up. Brody takes equipment to make his own beach closed sign and starts to head back to the office. He's approached by Hendricks, who wants to help. At least for now, Brody doesn't have to go it alone. Hendricks tells Brody that there's a scout troop doing a swim for their badges. Brody takes his truck and races off to warn them, leaving the deputy holding the materials for sign making. We then meet Mayor Larry Vaughn at one of his realty company offices, showing that he's got a job as a realtor as well as the mayor, implying that his motivations will be more financial than safe. The coroner and the editor enter the office and bring him up to speed. Clearly, these three are major influences in Amity. They spot Hendricks outside with signs and go to meet him. Even though Hendricks only has 5 minutes of screen time, I've always loved his character, and it's kind of clear why. He's written as a character that is loyal to Brody, wants to do the right thing, but is a bit young and naive. So when he reveals to Vaughn that there's a shark out there, he's not doing it for money or shock, but rather to alert people to the danger that they're in. He's even naive enough to believe that Vaughn will help. But when he tells them what the situation is, the three influential people exchange horrified looks. They know the danger that this shark poses to their town, not just to its people, but to its reputation, its dollar, and its future. Rather than start taking action himself to secure and protect the people, Vaughn's first question to Hendricks is, "Who have you told this to, Lenny?" He's not concerned with warning the people. He wants to avoid damaging their quaint little resort town, so he's already preparing to tell Hendricks, and later Brody, to keep quiet about the shark attack. The final act of the first 10 pages of this masterpiece is a critical character reveal and a major external force that will work against Brody on his quest to stop this shark. As expected for a movie that's half a century old, Jaws has a captivating opening to its screenplay, filled with suspense-building visuals, subtle symbolism, and choice character moments that keep the movie swimming at a quick pace. We instantly sympathize with Brody's complacency and his desire for a simple life, but understand his drive to protect his newfound paradise. We pick up on the subtleties of the town as a character and can infer the importance of its tourism and therefore the danger that the shark poses. Most importantly, we understand that this movie will be less about the shark itself and more about the actions and reactions of the characters involved in the story. The shark is a plot device that shapes and remolds Brody's character for the better, but it's his interactions with the mayor, Quint, and even Hooper that forces this lovable cop who's past his prime to get his act together today. And all it took is one giant shark named Bruce.